and I spent 2 years in Korea, 1 year with the 117th Aviation Company, which is an assault helicopter flying Hueys. Then I went to the 18th Aviation Group and was a staff officer for a year. Best part of a year. I got detailed down to 52nd Aviation Battalion as their training officer to help them draw up the new training program. From there I came back to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, went through the Artillery Advanced Course, then to Fort Riley, Kansas, where the Army sent me because they had an urgent requirement for a Cobra platoon leader at the Cav Troop. I get there after going through the Cobra transition, and the boss says, "You're here for what?" And I told him, and he said, "The last 5 guys to come in have been detailed to fill that slot." He said, "You're not going to get it. So what job would you like to have?" I said, "Yours." He said, "Other than mine." "How about the XO?" He said, "Well, there's a guy senior to you that's in that slot, so can't really do that." "How about the maintenance platoon leader?" I said, "I have no maintenance training. I don't know what I'm doing with that stuff. You know, I've not been to the test pilot course, and I can't really give a good test flight." He said, "All you have to do is follow the checklist." He said, "Beside me, you have more experience than anybody else." So I got to go to the service platoon, and I learned a lot about maintenance in the Army and how things should work and how they weren't. And I ended up flexing my tiny muscles and changed the service platoon from guys that were there part of an 8-hour day to somebody was there 24 hours a day. And we stayed on that schedule until we got our maintenance time to do a phased maintenance. It has to be done every 100 hours. Down to 2 to 3 days to get it completed. So that's aircraft in, 2 to 3 days later it's back out so that the platoon can use it. When I got there, they were taking 3, 4, sometimes 6 months to get a bird in and out. And they claimed it was our supports problem.
Well, were you flying the whole time while you're doing that? Were you piloting?
Not really. The troop instructor pilot carried a chip on his shoulder for some reason and did not want me flying Hueys because he hadn't had to say so as to whether or not I could fly. And so the boss just said, "You're going to fly your maintenance test flights. You have to do it to do the job." And that really rankled the guy. And so the only flights I got were running it up on the pad, going out and doing hovering checks, and every once in a while I get to take it up in the traffic pattern, or maybe just go out to the test pilot area and do topping checks, whatnot. That's seeing how high it can climb before it bleeds off. So did that for about 6 months until the guy they were training to be the maintenance officer got back and took over the job. And then I finally got my check right, but I got him in Cobras.
So you became a Cobra pilot for good?
Well, I am a Cobra pilot, and I had most of my time in Hueys. I had about 1,000 hours at that time in Hueys. So yeah, I'd been sent to be the gun platoon commander, and I got sent to the maintenance platoon instead. So when I got the chance to fly Cobras again, you bet.
So how much time you got in Cobras?
Oh, not very much really. I think I only got about 350, 400 hours in them before I left.
Did you get deployed at all with the 1st Cav?
With the 1st Infantry Division, no.
Oh, it's with the 1st Infantry, okay.
Yeah. No, I didn't get deployed until I was in a staff job. Once again, typical Army, what do you want to do? I told them. They wouldn't give it to me. They tried to assign me to different ROTC detachments, and I kept saying, no, I don't want to go ROTC. So, how about Fort Ord, California? You want to go there? Carries fixed wing transition with it. Yeah, I want to go to Fort Ord. Calls back a couple days later and he said, well, you can go to Fort Ord or you can go to Fort Sam Houston. Your choice. Fort Ord. Now, I want you to think about that a little bit. Long story short, I ended up going to Fort Sam Houston because there was a guy who had connections from the Fort Ord area that wanted to go back home. And so they gave him the Fort Ord assignment and sent me to Fort Sam Houston to be a safety officer, something I knew nothing about. So they had to send me to safety course en route. And because I'd been coming from a ground assignment, well, I'll digress for a second. I left Fort Riley in the 1st Infantry Division and went back to Picatinny Arsenal in Dover, New Jersey, and worked in research and development for 3 years. But that's a desk job, and you're not allowed to fly. So, leaving the desk job, going to Fort Sam Houston, I had to take the safety course so I'd be qualified to do the job they were putting me in. And then I had to take a refresher course because I'd not been flying for more than a year. And I was supposed to have a fixed wing qualification to be the safety officer, but the Army's not allowed to send you to more than 2 TDY courses back to back. But they said, we'll hold the slot for you, and when you get to Fort Sam Houston, they can send you back to get trained in fixed wing, and we guarantee you a slot. So I get to Fort Sam Houston, they won't send me back. Because it was a transition. The guy who's my boss was getting ready to retire, and he wouldn't say, yeah, you can go, because half of my training would be done under the new guy, and the new guy wouldn't say yes because he wanted to get there and make a full assessment before he said yes. And I had one window of opportunity, so I never got that. But
Who'd you deploy with?
yeah, that's a weird one. I didn't deploy with anybody. I was out on one of my inspection tours. That's what I did there at Fort Sam Houston with 5th Army. We checked the Army Reserve and National Guard aviation support facilities and the units that they support in an 8-state region. And I was in Kansas, just got back to the hotel room, get a phone call. You gotta come home. Why? Because you're going to Iraq. You gotta be kidding me. No, didn't you hear what's going on? Yeah, I heard, but you know, well, they need safety officers over there.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, a new unit, and they want you to be the safety officer for that unit. I said, okay. They send me to Fort Campbell. No, they send me to Fort Benning, Georgia, for knuckle training and familiarization with the new 9mm Beretta. And then they're going to send you to war. Issue you your stuff, and they're issuing me stuff to be a grunt, you know, an infantryman, and I'm supposed to be an aviator. I said, well, what about, you know, the gear for aviators? Oh, you're going to be an aviator? They'll issue it to you over there. But you got to take all this stuff with you. So anyway, I go through that, and they put us on TWA 747 and ship us over. I get there and I said I'm supposed to go to the 3rd Aviation Battalion that they're forming, and they said, we're not doing that. So they say they're going to send me to, can't remember the name of the city, it's in the center of Saudi Arabia, and that's where the aviation safety guy is stationed. I get there, and the civilian that's running this turns out to be a guy I'd met when I was at Fort Bragg. He was a Cobra pilot. I let him shoot the howitzer, and he gave me a ride in the front seat of the Cobra. That's where I really fell in love with Cobras. And he remembered me, I remembered him, and we talked about things. He said, well, where would you like to go, since this unit that you're supposed to be going to doesn't exist and isn't going to? I said, where do you need me the most? He said, with the 101st. I said, okay.
101st Airborne?
So I went to the 101st Airborne, and I took over as their safety manager. And the reservist that was doing the job was only doing it until they could get someone on active duty to fill the slot. So he went back. He worked for the National Transportation Safety Board full-time, so he went back home to do that, and I took over his job. First thing I got to do was investigate an accident that occurred when one of the soldiers picked up an anti-tank missile, was playing with it, and fired the thing. Burned a few guys in the tent where he was sitting, went across the compound, impacted, and killed one guy and put 3 others on an evacuation unit to Germany. That was my introduction. Found out that most of the casualties in a combat theater are stupid accidents. And that was our experience too. We had, fortunately, none during my tenure there, but before I got there, they'd had 3 or 4 Class A accidents with helicopters. The Class A is the worst category. You either have loss of life or a certain dollar value of property destroyed. And but it was an interesting time.
Is that Desert Shield?
Yeah, Desert Shield that turned into Desert Storm.